Okay, so for Halloween this year, why don't we do a little bit of a deck profile for a deck called Trick or Treat? Treat, of course, being a reference to Ghostrick Madolche. That has kind of been relevant in years past, but has since kind of taken a back seat in these current metas. Let's see what the deck can do with the new Madolche support, as well as with support from the modern day. So we will start off with the Madolche line. Got Princess, one of our big playmakers, as it does enable Chocolate's a la mode's second effect. Sewer, one of our big starters, it allows us to special summon a monster from the deck. Magiline allows us to add a Madolche monster to the hand. Typically, on turn 1, you would use it to add Penningasur to the hand. And Shelly, another card that can special summon Penningasur, and enables essentially a lot of it. These first 4 or 5 cards revolve around getting Penningasur out to grab Princess. Now, Penningasur is definitely a 3-of, but it does come with a lock. You cannot special summon cards except for Madolche monsters, which will become relevant later on as we move into the Ghostrick lineup. We have 2 Gelato. That is generally just because it is not as important as other cards, but it does definitely extend certain plays, and it does have it's a non-once per turn effect, which is nice, but it does require a certain couple of cards in order to work. 3 Hoot Cake, this can either grab the Gelato or the Penningasur to enable various Madolche plays. 1 Meowful, another card that special summons another card. Essentially, a lot of the deck revolves around getting some variation of Penningasur or putting Cess online or on the field before moving into your bigger extra deck plays. I have 3 Chateau. Realistically, you'll only need 2, as it can take up space. 1 Salon, nice because you get an extra normal summon with your Madolche monsters, and it can set a Madolche spell or trap if a card is returned to the deck, which Madolches, essentially all the Madolches, when they are destroyed by battle or card effect, return to the deck. 1 Madolche Ticket. This is another one that allows you to special summon a monster when a card is returned to the deck or hand. I guess I should also mention the field spell does allow you to add monsters that would be sent to the deck back to the hand. Now, in terms of the trap lineup, we have Promenade. This is one that I am not as familiar with in play, but I do know that essentially this is an imperm for Madolche specifically, as it would return a Madolche monster to the hand in order to negate the effects of one of your opponent's monsters. It also does act as extra material. You can banish it from the graveyard, attach 1 Madolche monster from your deck, band, or graveyard to a Madolche Xyz monster. Next is Dessert. This is one of the newer cards, and I do think it is a nice little addition. Essentially, it returns 2 monsters on the field, including a Madolche monster that you control, and you can special summon a monster from the extra deck with less attack equal to or less than the monster you returned to your hand from your hand or extra deck. Now, it also does act as an extender in the form of, or as an extra material for your Madolche Xyz monsters. As if a Madolche is shuffled back into the deck, it does attach itself to a Madolche Xyz monster as material. Next up, the Madolche lineup. We've got Feature, Le Souffle. It essentially makes can quick effect target a Madolche monster, make it unaffected by your bonus card effects this turn. It is a very nice little piece of protection that you probably only need one of, realistically. Queen Tiramisu. This was the original boss monster, and it is a good one. Non-quick effect, but you can target up to 2 Madolche monsters in your graveyard. Then spin monsters back to the deck, or cards even, that your opponent controls back into the deck. Ideally, you'd want to play at least 2. Chocolate a la mode. An evolved form of Pudding Cess. Probably get away with only one of, but it is a very strong card. Can, like I said, if it has Pudding Cess as material, you can special summon a monster from the deck. First, it is, you don't need 2 level 5s, you just need at least 1 rank 4 Madolche Xyz monster, which can be either Tiramisu or Le Souffle. Then, evolved boss Tiramisu comes up, another rank 5 that can be made with a rank 4, specifically your own Tiramisu. But it is basically just takes the original Tiramisu and makes it a quick effect. Now you can, on your opponent's turn, you can spin monsters cards back to the deck. Zeus is Zeus. You want to play Zeus in an Xyz deck. That is just the law. I don't even really need to say why that is a good card. There is Sistart, one of, realistically, as it does take up a bit too much space. Probably get away with 2. One of is definitely the best case. It protects your spells and traps from the back row, and it can shuffle monsters back into the deck in place of being destroyed. That is not once per turn. Protection is conditional. You do need to have a Madolche monster, Xyz monster, that this card points to, which is kind of why you probably get away with only 1 or 2. But generally, it is a fine card for Madolche. We have the newest cards, Myakuruns, which is a card that allows you to add a Madolche monster from your deck to your hand. Then you can shuffle 1 Madolche monster from your graveyard into your deck in order to special summon a monster from your hand, a Madolche monster specifically. Of course, this plays well into Penegasur, Princess, Gelato, as this is a beast, and Gelato does require you have a beast on the field in order to activate its effects. This is another card that could very much be a one-of. I can understand playing 2 of, but the extra deck specifically for this version, Ghostrick Madolche, is a lot more tight than other Madolche lists. Setting that to the side. Now, we also have our SP Little Knight stand-in because I cannot afford it. Unicorn can be made with 2 or more link monsters, 2 or more effect monsters with different names. Ideally, you would want to make this with an IP, and like I said, this is a stand-in for Little Knight, which is essentially the same thing, but gains an additional banish if it is made with a Link, Xyz, Fusion, or Synchro monster. Timer Unicorn works fine. It's slightly bigger, and it does spin a card into the deck, which is nice. And it works well with Madolches, so I didn't feel like switching it out in favor of a card that I just don't have. Next, we have Ghostrick Engine. And I do have a proper list that I will link in the description below. Ghostrick Spectre is the first one. Ghostricks are mostly for your defensive plays. If a Ghostrick monster you control is destroyed by battle, special summon Ghostrick Spectre in defense position, face down with defense position from your hand, and draw 1 card. Ghostrick Mary, if you take battle damage, discard this card, add a Ghostrick monster from your deck to your hand. You would ideally want to add his next view. Actually, more specifically, Ghostrick Mary actually special summons to summon. Yeah. Special summons, I'm thinking of Ghostrick Parade that adds a monster from deck to hand. That's only when an opponent will declare a direct attack. Ghostrick Lantern is one that you would want in your hand. You would, if a opponent's monster declares an attack, special this card in face down defense, negate the attack. Ghostrick Jack Frost, another one that has a similar hand trap-like effect. Special summon this card when a direct attack is declared. Book that monster into face down defense. And finally, Jiangshi. Ideally, what you would want to summon off Mary, you would special this card to the field face down defense. When it is attacked into, it flips face up. You get to add a Ghostrick monster from deck to hand, which ideally would be Spectre, since that would allow it to proc in the damage step, or at the end of the damage step. As Jiangshi would add when flipped face up, gets destroyed, then Spectre can proc. Last card you would need is Ghostrick Shot, which can be added off of a extra monster we'll see in a second. Essentially, it allows you to special summon any Ghostrick monster from your hand or graveyard. First Ghostrick monster from the extra deck we'll discuss is Ghostrick Dullahan. You've probably seen this in Pearly deck profiles as part of the Ghostrick engine. There, alongside Shot. And this is probably one of your cards that you won't summon as often. Ideally, you'd want to get any 2 Ghostrick monsters, level 1 Ghostrick monsters, whether that be Spectre, Mary, Jack Frost, or Lantern, on the field at the same time. Get this guy into the field, and then immediately overlay into Ghostrick Mary, or Ghostrick Angel of Mischief, which can add the Ghostrick Shot from deck to hand by detaching the Ghostrick Dullahan, Ghostrick Shot, special summons the Dullahan back, immediately overlay for a second. Then you can get into your Utopic future plays. Each of these are on a upside aside from Mary, or Mischief, which you would want to play 2 of. Now, another card that does kinda work with this as well is going to be Ghostrick Alucard, which will show on the screen right now. It can be made with any 2 level 3 monsters, Jiangxi, and funnily enough, Fruitcake is a level 3, and Meowful is a level 3. So you can make a card that way as well. Alucard is another card that can be used to make Mischief Angel of Mischief, because it just requires a Ghostrick Xyz monster. And it does also, when attached, allowing you to add a Ghostrick, both Dullahan and Alucard, allow you to add Ghostrick cards from the graveyard to the hand, including Ghostrick Shot. Ghostrick Shot is a hard once per turn, so you won't be using it. But you can also add stuff like Ghostrick Mary, Ghostrick Jack Frost, Lantern, whichever one you need for that turn. Finally, some staples. A lot of these were from my staple binder, so I had to sleeve them in a bit of a hurry. But obviously Ash Blossom, 3 of it does a lot of the deck is in terms of interruption, as well as being material for Hootcake. Hootcake would banish a monster from the graveyard, especially from the deck. And it does not specify it has to be a Madolche monster. It can be a Ghostrick monster, it can be Ash Blossom, it can be a hand trap. Just as long as it is a monster. Ash Blossom also stops stuff like the Charmy cards and Searchers, which makes it a decent defensive card, although very much power corrupt. You can absolutely cut Ash Blossom from lists in the future, dependent on the format. Dimension Shifter. This one doesn't hurt the deck. Well, it hurts the deck a little bit for stuff like Fruitcake and Petting a Sewer, and the fact that it is now a monster in the graveyard. That now it does help the deck more than it hurts, because it does basically for the next 2 turns, any card sent to the graveyard would be banished. Now, that does conflict with other hand traps, and it does conflict with certain plays you might want to make, like I mentioned, the Fruitcake. But what it does not do is it does not stop the Ghostricks from activating. Ghostricks only require to be either discarded or have a Ghostrick in hand that can be special summoned. So it's fine, but not great for the deck. Now, you can absolutely cut Shifter, and I imagine in future ban lists, Shifter is probably going to get moved at some point. So how many you play and how you want to play is up to you. Veiler is another card that sees some play, although this one is a bit more. It's another one that can be switched for something like Imperm. Definitely. Veiler does dodge and be activated from hand even if you control cards. It just needs to be on your opponent's turn. The problem is, it needs to be sent to the graveyard, which does kind of conflict with certain Madolche plays, but it can also be used as fodder for Hootcake. Imperm cannot, but it does have its restrictions. You can activate it inside of, like, you can activate it on either turn as long as you control no cards. Ghostbell, card that negates the activation of a card that would move a card out of the graveyard. This is very niche, dependent on the meta, but one thing it can do is prevent. It does activate during the damage step, since it negates activations. but it can also stop things like called buys, which, if your opponent attempts to call by one of your Madolche or Ghostrick monsters, you can activate this in response to negate that activation. Nibiru, again, meta dependent. Tribute all monsters on the field, special summon a token, and this guy to your field. It does not require going second, especially with Apollosa and Baron and Orluk on, where there's not as big protection against stuff like Nibiru. This is generally one of your best bets against combo-oriented decks that would otherwise cleave you in twain. Plus, going second, it does not tribute any of your monsters, so you can absolutely play through. Since Nibiru is non-targeting, it does, or non-destructive removal, your Madolche monsters will not proc and spin back to the deck, making it a bit difficult where you get Nibiru'd, as it is probably one of the best counters against a deck like this specifically. But it is also one of the biggest hand traps that helps the deck. Going second. Ghost Sister. For spells and traps, Forbidden Droplet versus Forbidden Chalice is an interesting one. There is an argument that Forbidden Chalice in this type of deck specifically is better than Droplets, just because it does not have to send to graveyard as cost. For Droplets, it works, you need to be able to send a card from your hand or field to the graveyard, something that does conflict with Shifter. Now, that does mean you are able to get rid of a Shifter that you drew for turn and cannot use, whereas Forbidden Chalice has less restrictions and does not conflict with the Madolches, but is also generally less powerful. Like, it does boost your opponent's monster, which admittedly Madolche does kind of have a hard time dealing with. Mostly because a lot of the monsters are not that big. But negating the effects is very good. And as long as one of those effects is not some variation of unaffected, in which case, if it is, you're probably losing the duel anyway. That does allow you to spin that monster back to the deck with Tiramisu. So this is more up to players' choice on whether or not they want to risk the Forbidden Droplet play or go with a safer Forbidden Chalice. Of course, hold by, activate a card by turning a card from the graveyard, banish it, negate its effect for 2 turns. You can use it. It is currently limited to 1. It is generally a fine card against certain hand traps, like the Evil Charmies, like Ash Blossom, like Shifter even. And generally it will, if you generally don't want to use it in the mirror match just because you want your plays to go through. And activating Called By does make some of your plays not as useful. Cosmic Cyclone. This and Harvey's Feather Duster are good for removing back row and stuff like Lab or other back row heavy decks. I generally do put them to the side, but in certain circumstances I will main deck them, especially against something like Konami. Prosperity, currently limited to 1, is a decent card that can dig to find your big playmakers, thus banish for cost, which does not turn off your Madolches, but this is also one that I can't see being cut because you don't want to, like I said, the extra deck is fairly tight, so you can absolutely cut this out so you get full access to your extra deck plays. It is limited to 1, so chances of you drawing it are not as high, but it can still happen. My final main state trap is an evenly matched. It is one of the best counters against U-Bell, as you saw in a YCS earlier this year. It does act as just one of the best ways of removal in the game. Finally, this one is an interesting one. Solemn Strike. Usually, if your opponent would summon a monster or activate a spell or trap a card effect that would summon a monster, negate it by paying 2,500. This is good against choke decks that have choke points, and it's much better in a more casual match. You can cut it or put it to the side as needed. Generally, that is it for the main portion of the deck profile. Now on to ratios. A lot of hand traps you need to play at 3 just to see them. Stuff like Ash Blossom and Shifter, you'd want to play at 3 if you do play them. Imperm, play at 3. Veiler, probably play at 3, but I can also see people cutting it down to 2 or 1, or even not playing it at all. Evenly matched, probably side deck. A side deck 3 of that you can exchange with other cards that work out. Like, ideally, you would want to play 3 of in the side deck, and maybe when siding, exchange it as a 1 of or 2 of. Nibiru, 1 of is fine. Ghost Spell, side deck 3 of probably. Ghost Sister, side deck 3 of. Pot of Prosperity. Harpies are only 1. Cosmic at 3, followed by only 1. Chalice or Droplets you could probably play at 3, but I can also see playing only 2, dependent on where you are, or dependent on how the meta looks. For the Ghostrick cards, generally 3 of Jiangshi. It's either 3 of Jiangshi or 1 of Jiangshi. 3 of Mary. 3. Maybe only 2 or 1 of Spectre. A lot of reason why, because the Ghostrick engine is a lot more of a defensive engine. That is more for when you're on the back foot. If your opponent is, if you've kind of bricked with Ghostrick. The Ghostrick cards are just kind of bricks because they cannot be normal summoned unless you control a Ghostrick monster. So they need to be set face down first. Generally, you would want a copy of Mary in hand, special summon Jiangshi to add something like Spectre or Jack Frost or Lantern to act as a battle trick. I can definitely see playing 3 Mary, 1 Jiangxi, maybe 2 of the rest. Just to kind of avoid bricking as much as possible. And I went into the Ghostrick, or the Madolche extra deck, when I went over it earlier. Essentially, Precious Start and Macaroons are 1-ofs, maybe 2-ofs. Zeus is a 1-of. Queen Tiramisu is a 1-of that you can slot in a second one. Chocolate mode 1-of. Tiramisu at least a 2-of. Best Souffle is a 1-of that can be a 2-of. Then SP Little Knight is a 1-of. All the traps are going to be 1-ofs. Same with Ticket, same with Salon, partially because Salon is fairly expensive for some reason. But also because they are generally searchable. Chateau is a 2-of. Waffle is a 1-of. Hootcake is a 3-of. Gelato, ideally, you would want 3. You can get away with playing 2. It does not hurt the deck that much, since you're most of the time going to be special summoning it with an effect like Hootcake or Passenger. Sewer. Angeli is a 3-of. Mageline, another 3-of that you can play at 2. Ideally, you would want to play it at 3. Sewer, 3-of. Pudding Cess, another 2-of. Like, ideally, you would want to play 2 of this. Just because it can very much be a brick. Worst case scenario. That is going to be the deck profile for today. This is probably the first real deck profile that I'm going to be doing. I do want to put in some more, specifically with some of my other pet decks like Sulfacord, like Ice Jade, Goatee, and stuff like that. I will, as well as decks that I have on like YGO Pro. We'll also be adding a couple games that I played with a variation of this deck. The other cards that are staples, obviously the Molcharmy cards, the Dominus Impulse card is another 3-of that I just do not have at the moment because Fualas is like $129. I'm not affording that anytime soon. But yeah, that is basically it for this Ghostrick Madolche deck profile. Thank you everyone who decided to drop by and watch. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a happy Halloween. Take care.